I got to open the can. All right, noting that it is 7:02, I will call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the February 28th meeting. It's not on our agenda this month for some reason.
So moved.
So we got a motion for the minutes.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is public appearances on any non-agenda items. Seeing nobody here who I don't recognize, we will move on to agenda review. This is copied from some other committee.
We didn't even have roll call.
No, well, we had call to order, so we got a whole new agenda that none of us even knew about. So we're going to skip agenda review because that's boring, and we'll just go into the agenda items.
You want me to do a roll call?
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda.
Well, we got to do it, I suppose.
We'll do it under non-agenda items. How's that? Alder Allen,
Present.
Mayor Arata Frada.
Yeah.
Alder Gerhardt is delayed. Alder Herbst.
Here.
Alder Herbst appears to be absent. Alder Jetzer.
Here.
Alder Maldonado.
Here.
Alder Strassman also appears to be absent. Alder Udell.
Here.
Alder Wheeler is absent with excuse. You do have a majority of the council.
All right, let's move on to item 5, agenda items. We have Resolution R2424, approval of the 2024 to 2028 Park and Open Space and Recreation Plan. It's a discussion only. And our dutiful Parks Administrator is here. And so he will begin. Go ahead, Scott, with your presentation.
Well, thank you, Alder Allen. First off, I do want to apologize. Some of you have heard this presentation before, so if you could just bear with me for a little bit, we'll go through the same presentation. And I would be remiss if I didn't, thank Deanna Bruner and our Deanna and Brad from the planning department. They're the staff that really did the work in updating this plan, and actually the planning department does provide that planning tool for the Parks Department, and we're certainly appreciative. Now the plan before you tonight is actually an update of the 2015 to 2020 Park and Open Space Plan. And if you remember back in 2015, Wade Thompson, who was with the planning department at that time, basically wrote a new plan for us. It really has some cool additions and features, and does have three components. One is the executive summary, one is the existing conditions, and then the action items, which is really the meat of the plan, if you would. And I might say that this document provides an action plan for the Park and Recreation Department. So it really indicates the goals and actions to be undertaken. It does not identify details or specifics of each of those goals or actions. So one interesting thing that I'm finding as I go around to all the committees, it's kind of just an observation that the parks provide the gathering locations for residents and people within the community, and the Park and Open Space Plan actually provides residency for a lot of our departments. If you look at the action items, each of the action items actually refers to or is connected to one of our different committees or commissions within the community. So I thought that was really cool. And then what I also did is I've got some handouts, and actually if you or if you don't take them with you, if you just leave the handouts there, and then I can reuse them. But the first handout I've got is that we do a host report. I do a host report for each year. And on the front page is the 2024 host report, and then on the back page is the 2015. So I was able to kind of reference back and forth from 2015 to 2024, but maybe a couple of the observations that I did see, that the top part of the host report indicates the full-time staff allocations. In 2015, we had 10.25. And we currently have 11.75 full-time equivalents. And then actually the middle portion of the host report is budget information. And you can see in 2024 we have almost $2 million in budget allocation. In comparison to 2015, we had a little bit over $1 million of budget. One other thing that I noticed is the recreation, or the revenue that is collected, and basically we receive revenue from recreation program offerings, park shelter rentals, community center rentals, and athletic field rentals. And you can see in 2023 we had almost $270,000 in revenue, and in comparison to 2015, we had a little bit over $200,000. But what I noticed too is you could see in 2019 we had about $260,000, and then you notice what happened in 2020. COVID hit, so the revenues really went down. But certainly in 2023 we've rebounded and even gone ahead of our revenues collected from 2019. Also, another interesting thing is trees planted. In 2023, we did plant 401 trees, which is pretty substantial, actually. General park information. Currently, we have 788 acres. In comparison to 2015, we had 507. So there's quite a jump in acreage. And then actually on the bottom, since 2015, we've added the dog park, Sunnyside, an inclusive playground. We actually have a disc golf course, which is part of the golf course at Nine Springs. We have 8 pickleball courts and over 30 miles of trails within the city. And if you look at 2015, we had about 20 miles of trails. So that's really grown. And I did go into...
Before you move off that, does that 30 miles of trails, does that include like the Military Ridge and the Cannonball? So that's just the ones that we own, that we're responsible for.
Correct. In one, there was Alder Jetzer brought up a question to me at one point in time, asked me if we had a list of all the amenities and all the conditions and those kinds of things. And you asked me how many half basketball courts we had. Do you remember what I guessed?
25. The exact number.
No, it was close though. Small. I guessed 25, and we actually have 22. So I was pretty close. But just to give you a little bit of context, as far as the amenities within your park system, we have 15 small gazebos, 14 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, 12 large shelters, which are basically, most of them are rentable, 13 ball fields, as I mentioned, 22 half basketball courts, 6 full basketball courts, and 40 playgrounds within the park system. So that's a little bit of detail on the amenities that are included in your park system. Another item that I included in the packet is the parkland improvement fee schedule.
Mind if I go back to another
No.
question here? Specifically regarding the trees, I'm wondering a couple of things. One, primarily where are those being planted? Are a lot of these street trees, or are they going into parks? And then two, how's how many trees have had to be removed due to like emerald ash borer and whatever else may be taking them out?
I'll be taking another educated guess. but we typically, well, let me start with the tree plantings. The majority of them are on, within the street, within the, what do we call it, the terrace, between the sidewalk and the curb, and a lot of them are with developments, Bill. And there are some replacements that we do on the streets, but there's others that are in the park. So I would say it's probably as, it might be, 30, no, maybe 50, 30, 20, 50 development trees, 30 replacement trees, and 20% in the parks, roughly. And what was the second one was?
Trees that have to be removed.
Well, and actually what Anna, we created an emerald ash borer mitigation plan. A lot of the trees that we are removing are ash trees, but part of the management plan. And we've been removing 100, 125 a year or so. And then actually what we do is we treat the balance of them to try to the treatment will last for 2 or 3 years to kind of hold trees on so that we can manage the removal of them depending on our capacity. Eventually all the ash trees are going to be removed. We do have an intern coming in this summer, and one of the things that we're going to work on is updating that original emerald ash borer mitigation plan, and then we'll bring that forward so we'll have more details about how that management plan is working actually. And then the other piece is the parkland dedication fee and park improvement fee table. I will tell you that one of the action items within our park and open space plan is to take a relook at this. So that's one of the things that we're going to be taking a look at. And like I say, what I've done when I go to the different groups is I talk about, well, I read the action item framework, and if you can indulge me, I'm going to read it. Recreation in public spaces can take many different forms. Conventional forms include basketball, volleyball courts, baseball, softball diamonds, play equipment, and natural activities such as walking and hiking. These conventional forms will always have a place on public spaces. This section of the plan looks beyond these conventional forms and looks at recreation in public spaces through the following framework. It's actually 3 S's. And if you can think of, the first S is sociable, where the parks really provide a gathering location for people within our community. Solitude, they'll be diverse in their functions, if you would. Solitude, you can think of nature or places to kind of unwind and relax. And then seams, which is connectivity with our trail system connecting to all the different parks and transportation. So when we have a new park that comes online, we really try to incorporate the 3 S's within that park, within that new park. And then a vision, the City of Fitchburg Park Open Space and Rec System strives for an appropriate balance of passive and active recreational social opportunities and responsible preservation and sustainable stewardship of the city's natural environment and resources. The system works to achieve these ideals through an adherence to the city's growth principles of sustainability, equitable, vibrant, and cooperative as contained in the city's comprehensive plan, as well as the system's 3 S's framework of sociable, solitude, and seams. So that's really it in a nutshell. And what I'm finding is what groups will do is they'll take a look at the specific goal that may be appropriate to them, and then I encourage them to kind of tighten up the language or any kind of suggestions that they might have for each of those goals. The process that we're going to go through is we are receiving a lot of comments and thoughts and ideas, so staff will take, basically the planning department will take all of those comments that we receive and then begin to start to incorporate them into the plan. And then at that point, actually go back out around, because I know the Plan Commission is interested in seeing the plan again. The Park Commission, they'll get their first crack at it in April. But I guess what I'm saying is it may not be an April 23rd approval. It might be a little bit after that, so that we can incorporate all the comments that we hear along the way.
What I want to mention what we did last night in Plan Commission, I provide, me personally, a lot of comment to the plan and some of the others members, and we decided not to approve this plan until we table until, because we want to see our recommendation in the plan, and we want to see also what are the other committees' inputs and recommendations. So Plan Commission felt that in order for us to approve a plan, it should be the final plan, no this draft, because this is still a draft. Scott is collecting information, so this would say last night was planned, and we provide a lot of input, and that we would like to see in the plan.
And that's appreciated. And I'm kind of using it as an opportunity to go out and promote the Park Rec and Forestry Department. And I think it does provide a great asset to the community, and so I think that the time that I'm spending going around and talking to each of the groups is really well invested. And actually too, everyone is very busy, so when it's on the agenda, they then tend to take a closer look at it and see there's a lot of things in there, and so it's been interesting and beneficial, I think. Okay. And then, like I say, if you just leave on the table, I'll collect them in the morning and then reuse them. And anytime, any comments, don't hesitate to reach out and provide your input. And I appreciate the time.
Is there going to be more detail in these sections? Well, like I'm looking through and I see, for example, the section that says existing conditions report. Mm-hmm. And I guess what I would like to see there is a listing of every single park and what the current situation is. And maybe I'm just missing it here somewhere.
Each of them is identified, and there's a description and acreage.
Yeah, but I mean things like playground equipment, when's it going to have to be replaced, tennis courts, basketball courts, like we had that big discussion last week.
Yep, and I will tell you, Jay, that we're working on that internally, so there'll be some thoughts that are going to be offered as potential.
Just to have some more complete data of what we actually have.
I think we, in the CIP for Public Works, they have a very good, table in Excel where they have all the replacement by different color by year. I think we should incorporate that in this year's CIP with all what they are asking. It would be great.
But it should be in this document. Well, I think so, because many people who want to find that information are not going to go digging through 330 pages of the CIP. This is a much more convenient place for it to be. Now, maybe it can be in both places. I don't have a problem with that, but I think this document, if it's going to be our park and open space plan, it needs to be here.
And I might add, Jay, that with Dakota Dorn has recently been hired as a GIS full-time person. What he did is he put a park storybook together, which is on our web page that has those details for each of the individual parks, which is another location for that information.
Can you share that link with all of that? Can you share that link with the Common Council, because
Sure.
I didn't know about this.
Sure, I'll send that. Mm-hmm.
Anyone have any other questions?
Last night he got all my comments.
So you only have to hear it once. Oh.
All right, well, with that, thanks for coming, Scott, and we will move on to referendum update and/or discussion. And, you know, I'm looking at the draft agenda that I approved the other day, and that was different. It's a very different document than the agenda that actually got published. So under the draft agenda, we had two items. We had referendum update and/or discussion and community survey presentation. So apparently we are mashing those together.
We apparently are, and I've already contacted the clerk's office about a couple of the items that were inadvertently left off.
Yeah. So it looks like I think this is the agenda from a different committee that just got labeled as committee of the whole, because the other committees don't do Pledge of Allegiance like we do, and they don't have like Plan Commission does agenda review, and we don't normally do that here. So I think this is just lifted from another committee. So anyhow, moving on, Adam has taken the hot seat, so I guess.
So Adam is there, and I will kick off the presentation. So as we all know, I shouldn't say presentation, I'll kick off and introduce our guests here from Miller Communications and Community Perceptions. But as we all know, we are currently involved with surveying our community regarding a potential referendum, what options they may potentially support or not support, and what sorts of other initiatives are they interested in the City Council considering or potentially not considering. So we have with us Scott Gerard and Rob. I'll probably not pronounce your name correctly, but I'm going to go with Demuse, and you can correct that.
I'll take it, actually. I've been called worse, so I'll take it.
All right. So they are both from Community Perceptions. And then we have Mia Trippi from Miller Communications. You've all seen Mia before. And we'll kick it off with a short presentation by our consultants from Community Perceptions. And then obviously they'll be able to answer some questions as well. So if there aren't any questions at this point in time, I'll turn it over.
Howdy. Thank you. So Scott and I did put together a presentation for you. So if you give us a chance to head through that, we did leave some time at the end for questions as well. We want to make sure that we get through both things here. So let's get started with a few introductions. As you just heard, there are two hopefully friendly folks on the call. So we're your project managers. My name is Rod Demise. I serve as the research director for School Perceptions. And then like you just heard, Scott Gerard is our project manager and a communications specialist. Our mission, we've been in business for, 22 years now, 22 plus years now, I guess. Our mission has never once changed. We want to help community leaders do three things: gather, organize, and use data to make strategic decisions. We've done this process in nearly 1,000 communities that have all been doing very similar things that you are doing now, that kind of long-term strategic planning and potential referendum planning process. And actually, including about 16 years ago now, we did your library. The Fitchburg Library in 2008. I don't think it was built, it was at 2010, but the survey went out, I believe, in spring, summer, maybe early fall of 2008. So we are the same company that did that referendum as well. Just a little bit about us, and then we'll get into some Fitchburg things specifically. We view ourselves as a conduit for taxpayers, and our goal is helping you understand that if we have a referendum plan that you are considering, kind of fast forwarding time to November 5th or August or whatever you determine an election date to be, our goal is to help you understand if we put a thing on the ballot, will that thing be supported by a majority of our taxpayers, which is the 50% plus one that a community needs in order to pass a referendum. But to do that, your community needs to have a voice in creating that plan and an understanding of what the plans you are currently mulling to be. So we're kind of that middleman. In your particular survey strategy in Fitchburg, we want to help residents understand the needs of this city, especially in regard to your growth, and what is being considered. In other words, from a survey respondent perspective, I can't just know what you're going to do, or I can't just know how much it's going to cost me. While those two things are certainly important, I need to know what problem are you asking me to solve. If there's going to be a potential property tax increase on whatever type of property I have, or if I'm going to show up and vote on election day, what is it you're asking me to do? What feedback do you want? Or why can't you do these things out of your own budget right now? So I can't give you a solution until I know what the problem is. So with the strategy that's deployed in Fitchburg right now, it's asking residents to share their priorities with you on various funding initiatives, and then understand what initiatives, if any, the community is going to support. But ultimately, what that allows you to do is to really understand two things at the same time. How much money is our community or the taxpayers in our community willing to support in the order of priorities that they are giving us? So you see where those two lines cross. So say, for instance, and by the way, these are made up numbers because your data is coming in hot and heavy as we speak. So again, these are made up. These are not indicative of what your current outcomes are. But say, for the sake of example, the community is willing to support $2 million. You'll know what that ceiling is, which means that you will need to back into a plan with whatever initiatives are the community's highest priorities, knowing that it cannot be more expensive than what that ceiling is, be it 2 million, 5 million, whatever that number is. You will know how much money people are willing to tolerate, and you will know in what order folks want you to tackle the project. So that's why we kind of talk about where those two lines are crossing. It's a survey a type of survey that we've done many, many times in school districts and communities around the state. So Fitchburg is certainly not the first community to undertake this type of strategy. It's been in time tested now for 22 years. To do this, though, to put together a survey that's going to work well for you, there are always competing questions that we're trying to answer and that we've been emailed about, whether it's Fitchburg or anywhere else that we work across the Midwest. There are competing thoughts that we'll always get in the survey. Some folks will say, I don't know, I'm not an expert. Why are you asking me? This is why we elect people. You tell them, or you ask them, they make the decision. At the same time, 2 minutes later, we'll get a question that says, why aren't you asking me for more? I'm the taxpayer. The people that we vote, we're kind of their bosses. So at the same time, we're getting I don't know, don't ask me and ask me more. Then the next day we'll get, this is way too long. I'm not taking this. This is going to take me way too long to complete. And then a couple of minutes later, we'll be hearing an email that says, there's just not enough information here. There needs to be more here for me to give an educated guess. So on the one hand, we're getting the this is too long and this is too short message. And then we get another competing kind of, third corner of the triangle, the complexity of what we ultimately decide to put in a survey. And some folks will say, boy, this survey is way too esoteric. There are words in here, there may be concepts in here that the average community member won't understand. And then we'll get another email that says, don't talk down to me, I'm not a fool, use words that I would use. So then people want, more complicated facts. At the same time, other people are like, this is way too complicated. So we have to take all those things and try to put together a survey that makes everybody happy. Sometimes that means we make nobody happy. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't really want people to be mad at me, but there's all those kinds of people want more, people want less, people want more detail. People say, if this doesn't take me 3 minutes to do, I ain't doing it. So we try to weave all those together in a way that we feel is going to give predictive data for you. When we talk about data, our goal for a response rate for you is approximately 17 to 18%. Based on your survey, we feel confident in that approach. It's 1,778 words. That's pretty normal. And we're pretty sensitive to length. For every 100 words that we add to a survey, the response rate declines by about 1%. So we do want to shorten that, but at the same time, we don't want to go too short. And people say, what's the problem? Like, what's going on here? What are you going to do? So if we cut too far back, then you won't have good data as well, because otherwise you're just going to end up with all kinds of undecideds. And then you'd be paying us for data that you ultimately don't get back. And I don't want you to waste taxpayer dollars on that either. So we're looking for a response rate of about 17 to 18%. Over the last 8 hours, your response rate increased by about 2%. We are way too early to provide any kind of detail for this. In fact, in raw numbers, your responses went up by 7% over the last 9 hours. This is changing as we speak. And the survey is open for another 2 days. We're currently processing about 2,000 to 3,000 surveys a day. Obviously, not all of those are coming from Fitchburg, but your data will continue to change with people that got it in on time for a full week after the survey, which is why we're not in a position to provide you a direction on which way the winds are blowing right now. because by the time the sentence would be done, the data would be changed. So we can't do that yet. We will come April 24th, but we can't do that yet. With the approach that you took and with that response rate, we are right 94% of the time. But I want to be clear about what a success means in our work. Success for us, a W or a win for us, is if the data says that something's going to pass and you take that plan to ballot, and it does, that's a win. That is an accurate prediction in our work. The flip side of that is also true. If the data is telling us that a plan is going to fail, and you take that plan to ballot anyhow, which doesn't happen often, but it does sometimes happen, and that fails, that is a win in our world. Because our success is defined by an accurate prediction. We are not in the business of seeing a referendum pass or fail. We are just merely messengers for what your community is telling you. We feel really confident in your data right now. The margin of error is going to be less than 2.8% because your response rate is only going to go up from here. Really, your data quiets down after about 500 to 600 responses. It gets really jumpy before then, but after about 500, your data is going to quiet down pretty substantially, and it's not going to change a great deal. But we want to make sure that the voices are honored in your community. One of the reasons why we feel pretty confident in our prediction as well is based on a community the size of Fitchburg, we could have done a random sample. We didn't, but we could have done a random sample if we had done that, to be 95% confident that the result was plus or minus 3% of the prediction, we only would have needed to sample 993 people. 17% of that is 169. So you're about 10 times beyond what we would have needed to get to an accurate prediction, and you didn't even do a sample. So your denominator here is like 14,486 because yours was determined by residences. So you're way beyond what you need in order to produce an accurate presentation based on the statistics that we're approaching this with. Obviously, we didn't do a random sample because we didn't necessarily feel that was fair. We wanted all of your taxpayers to be able to at least have the opportunity to weigh in should they so choose. The other reason why we feel pretty confident is while we're not perfect at it, we approach every project with what we call the quick trip rule. It isn't the way I would hear people talking at 6 a.m. when they get coffee and Glazers. If not, it's not good language for a survey. If it is, that's kind of the route we want to go down. Things that sound like school finance jargon or construction jargon or architecture jargon, that's a no-no in our. We really want to make sure that it reflects the way Joe taxpayer speaks, while at the same time making sure that we speak to people in a way they want to be spoken with. Your survey deadline, as I said, is Friday. We just changed this before. You're up to 15 or 1,512 responses. Actually, for context, that's 50% more than what you had in 2008. And we actually made an accurate prediction then as well. And so actually, you're outstripping your response rate compared to how much your city has grown over that time. I think the city has grown, about 25% over the last 16 years. But your response rate when you send out a survey is more than 50% than you were last time. And we were also right in our prediction in Fitchburg 16 years ago. So again, I just want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable in terms of the data that we're giving you, especially relative to the work that you did with us in 2008. The other thing we look at is age. Certainly not all groups vote at the same proportion or the same rate. That's not a Fitchburg thing. That's not a Wisconsin thing. If you have the answer to that, I'm all ears. 18 to 24 age group has some of the lowest voting outcome, or has some of the lowest voting proportions. Meanwhile, you're 65 plus, they are loyal voters. They will be there. They will let you know what they think on election day with a plan that you potentially take there if the data tells you to do so. So it's okay to be overrepresented in 65 plus in our world because you're going to be overrepresented on election day in that age group as well. And again, our goal is to help you understand if you take something to ballot, will it be passed? You're actually looking at about a threefold increase in your 65 plus. So based on the latest American Community Census data, 13.4% of your city is 65 plus. 36% of your survey takers are in that age range. Again, that's a good thing in our world because we want to make sure that we can produce a prediction for your election as you choose to have it. And having that overrepresentation helps us do so because that's a better mirror of the folks that are going to be there on election day. Renter owner, this is also one of the questions in there. This is not uncommon, frankly. Homeowners are more loyal voters. More homeowners will show up on election day as well as compared to renters. And renters are just one step removed. And I say that as a person who just bought their first home about 6 months ago and now owes the bank a heck of a lot of money. It's just one layer difference. As a renter, you're going to feel the increase in property taxes, but it's a little bit delayed, and you're feeling it through your rent, not with a direct property tax bill. And that's one of the reasons, among others, why renters are usually typically lower in a survey response rate, especially with something that relates to property taxes, because they are not property owners. So this is not unnormal, especially in a survey that is related to a potential property tax increase. As you move forward with your final survey push, one of the things that we learned is how people want to be communicated with. And the wording of this question was important. So it's not how am I getting information from you? It's when I want to learn about the city, how do I want to learn about it? And the Fitchburg Star is up top. People want to learn about what's going on in Fitchburg through the Star. Kind of your second tier, but hardly less important, are the city newsletters and the city website, and then emails as well. So I don't know what the situation is in Fitchburg, where people have like an opt-in system or how it works. But when people want to know what's going on, that's kind of where you want to, those are the baskets you want to put your eggs in. Obviously Instagram, we put it on there to see if anybody would check it. Very few have. So when you're thinking about where do we put our limited resources, don't spend a great deal amount of time building out an Instagram page. Think about how you're communicating via the Star, the newsletters, the website, and emails. How does this look over the next few weeks? Well, Scott and I are going to be putting in a whole bunch of data over the next, say, week and a half or so, specifically related to Fitchburg. So while the survey closes on Friday, there will be people who drop it in the mail on time, and they'll continue to come in over the next week or so. And we'll process those for at least to the next week. We do need about 3 weeks to let those stragglers come in, and to make sure we honor those results, we need a little bit of time to produce a digestible report for you. That will come. Miller Communications will help publish the survey results in a variety of ways. And then come April 24th, some combination of us will be at your meeting with the survey results. And that's kind of the final, what projects, if any, will the community support, and what property tax increase, if any, is the community willing to stomach. I'm gonna take a drink of water, but please, if there are any questions, Scott and I and Mia as well are happy to take them.
Joe?
Sure. So, I mean, I understand, I hear your metric for success in accuracy and ultimately winning a referendum, but it's really deeply concerning to me that the metric is by kind of going after folks who typically tend to show up at the polls, because just in my opinion as a policymaker, right, as somebody who wants to ensure, and I hope my fellow council members also want to ensure that that we have equity in our city and that all voices are heard, that by just listening to the homeowners, just listening to people over 65, and I'm gonna go and make a kind of a jump here and say that probably most of the folks that end up filling the survey won't be representative demographically of our city. I see that perpetuates inequality and inequity. So I'd like to ask if your firm, what is your firm's approach to equity, to ensuring that underrepresented voices are heard and that underrepresented voices fill out your survey? Because I've had several residents reach out to me kind of about some of the things that you had mentioned in the beginning of your presentation, just the inaccessibility of it, some of the academic language, and also, and I've shared this in public at council meetings, but the fact that, when this survey was mailed out, the part that was translated into Spanish wasn't even the main part that kind of gives an introduction of what the actual survey is. So it's really deeply concerning that, like, the folks that are targeted are the folks that show up, because that's not who that's not who I want to only show up. I want our Spanish speaking residents to show up. I want our renters to show up. I want our residents of color to show up. I want our residents who have less accessibility issues to show up. I want our residents who don't just, come to our meetings and are tuned into everything to show up, because these decisions impact them as well. So I'd just like to get your take on how your firm prioritizes equity and inclusion.
Well, I guess I disagree that it's not an equitable approach.
Is it okay if I jump in really quick and just
Yep.
a point of clarification? Joe, appreciate your perspective on this and you bringing this question forward. I think it's really important to understand sort of the scope of the survey and just a couple of initial points of clarification. So first and foremost, to your point, it is important to make sure that the opportunity to participate and to be heard from our perspective went out to all of the residents of the city of Fitchburg. And to that end, we worked with city staff to develop a mailing list that included every residence. So whether that is a home that someone owns or an apartment or other unit that they rent, every one of those residences was on that mailing list and received a survey. So to be clear, this did not just go to homeowners. While that group may be represented in what you see currently as who has responded to date, it is not true that this did not go to those who may have rented. It is also likewise not true that this would have only gone to some folks who are in a certain age group. That's not something that we looked at in any way, shape, or form when determining kind of how to send this out.
Oh, I just want to clarify that I didn't say either of those things. So I'm just talking about the approach that was mentioned here. I know that every resident's got this, but I think when we talk about some of the feedback that I myself personally gave to our staff, I think it's really important that it's accessible, not just that it gets to everybody, but that it's actually accessible. And that's my big concern, and that's been my concern throughout this process. And I feel like myself and a few other council members have mentioned this, that the issue with language access has been a huge one. And I'm concerned that our Spanish speaking residents will see this, not know what it is, and maybe see part of it in Spanish, but not the part that's important, and bypass this survey. That's my concern.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. I guess the part I disagree on is what you want the survey ultimately to do and how you get there. So I don't think that there is a difference between trying to understand what might happen on election day and what public opinion is writ large. Those things don't always match up. So if you want to go into it knowing if we put a thing on the ballot, is it going to be supported? This is a mechanism that will help you understand whether that's the case. You could do public opinion research, and we've done that, but that may artificially inflate or deflate what is going to happen on election day. And that's a route you can go, but that is not election prediction. That would not give you the data to help you understand whether a thing we're going to put on the ballot is going to be supported by a majority of taxpayers. That's a different thing. And I would say, in terms of, I agree with Mia. So this is not a disagreement. This is an addendum to what she's saying. Part of it, we could have sent 2 surveys, with Spanish. I understand that printing and mailing budgets were also limited. We are subject to an 8-page survey. Anything longer than that, people don't take it. We've seen the difference between an 8 and 12-page survey. Nobody takes a 12-page survey, and I didn't want you to pay for something that nobody was going to take as well. And I guess I would revisit the threading that we have to have where accessibility is also a piece, and then at the exact same time, we'll hear criticisms that, we don't want to talk down to anybody. Don't talk to me like I'm a fool. Use words that I want to use as well. And I won't say we're perfect yet, but we try to find the best balance we can to provide a way where people can intelligibly answer and also make it friendly enough. And they're complicated topics, which is why sometimes these surveys are hard, because we're talking about things that people don't think about in their everyday life. And that's sometimes why we get the question as well is this something that I should be deciding as a taxpayer, or is it something I want my elected leader to do? So I guess that's maybe the fundamental approach that I would take here is public opinion is not the same as election prediction research. And I feel like confident if you want to know how something is going to be taken on a ballot, this is a route that will give you that, much like what happened in 2008 with the library.
All right, I want to jump in here
I hear
because
that.
Joe, let me jump in here a
I
minute.
hear that. However,
Okay.
I think that when we're considering, who's going to show up on election day, that's our job as a city to to get people to the polls. And it's our job to, make sure that people show up. And I know that we have limitations in what we can tell people to do. And I'm not saying that we guide people towards voting yes or no on the referendum, but the fact that, we have the ability as a city to be able to ensure that people show up. I think that's very important because these decisions, again, are going to affect their lives. I think the other thing to mention, the Fitchburg Star was mentioned as a news source that people want to get their news from. However, a few years ago, the Fitchburg Star stopped sending to every resident of the city. And the neighborhoods that primarily lost access to the Fitchburg Star, like my neighborhood, are neighborhoods where a majority of residents are people of color. And so you're getting a huge miss and this isn't necessarily your job or your doing or your responsibility. But just the fact that the Fitchburg Star does not deliver to every resident in our city is also a point of inequity and will hurt the ability for a referendum to get voted on if residents aren't even seeing it.
All right,
And
I
in
want
your defense, it's
to
possibly
jump
well,
in here for a minute because the conversation that's been going on the last 10 or 12 minutes has really been frustrating to me. Joe made what I thought was a really good point, and both of you completely missed the point, which is that Spanish-speaking residents were essentially ignored by the survey that was sent out. There was one tiny little paragraph in the middle of that didn't even say what the survey was about. It was just assumed that whoever got it would know what it's about. 20% of our residents are Spanish-speaking people. And, I know when Joe and I first saw that, we had a conversation about that because it's like, why are we shutting out this percentage of our population? The Fitchburg Star right now, I think, only goes to 82% of the population, and it barely covers Fitchburg news. It's mostly covering high school sports from Oregon and Verona. And every once in a while, it'll have some news article that's 3 weeks past date because it only comes out once a month. So, I think the points that Joe is trying to make here are valid and important points. And I think that survey that went out, if that's the way the rest of this is going to be conducted, I'm really concerned because that was not what I thought what our residents needed in order to be able to truly participate. Sure, if you're an English speaker and you live in one of the neighborhoods that's affluent, maybe you can deal with it. But if you're a Spanish speaker living in a neighborhood that doesn't have access to a lot of other news sources, it was just a disservice to those people. And I'm concerned that if we're going to continue down this same path between now and August, that the information that our residents need to make a decision are not going to be heard. The people, the poor people, and the Latino people, and the African American people who live in this community need to be able to participate in this as well, because all of these issues that we're talking about in the referendum affect them. So we need to do better than what we just did, and I think that's what Joe is trying to say in a little less aggressive manner.
Well, I can't tell you what to do with the data when you get it back. If you're unsatisfied with the way it was rolled out, I can't go back and I can't change what happened in February. I think that we'll be able to get you data in April that says what would ultimately happen on election day. But whether or not you want to move forward with that data, that's a value judgment that I can't make. If you're unsatisfied with what that data is telling you, will I feel like it will tell you what will happen? Yes, but I can't tell you whether you should move forward with that data or not. That's a value judgment I can't make on your behalf.
But my concern is that we gave this feedback and it wasn't listened to. I said it very clearly and explicitly in a meeting and to staff, and my suggestion was ignored. I said that there should be the part that should be in Spanish should be an introduction to what this letter actually is, and that wasn't done. So that concerns me. The fact that wasn't even listened to, and the survey went out, and we are where we are, and money's been spent and everything's been paid for is infuriating. It's really infuriating, and it doesn't represent what this community is.
Okay.
Chad?
I know that Alder Maldonado, Alder Allen, and others on the council have commented about the front page of the survey and the lack of Spanish language interpretation on there. I take responsibility for that. That feedback was obviously shared, that was provided at the committee of the whole after the printing was done. So hopefully that is an item that can be utilized in the future for the survey company in the event they have a similar survey that's done in the city of Fitchburg moving forward. And then, of course, it's also an opportunity for us to do better if this council looks to go forward with a referendum. We already know that there will be community outreach and communications efforts that will take place, and we will need to do our best with input from the council on how best to ensure that our Spanish-speaking residents receive the information that they need to, one, make an informed decision, and two, ultimately, hopefully come out to the poll to vote.
All right. Any other comments on this point? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so do you think we're going to get enough respondents, or what's the threshold for you to be able to say, okay, we realize that the over 65 crowd is overrepresented by a factor of 3 in terms of their opinion, and that renters, which represent about 50% of all the residents in Fitchburg, are underrepresented by a factor of 3. Can we, putting aside, or I guess separating the two purposes here, one, can we decide on a dollar amount and get that referendum to pass? And then two, what are we going to do with those dollars? So for the second part, what are we going to do with those dollars? It'd be instructive to look at, the minority respondents who represent potentially a majority of the residents. So what sort of a threshold, or what kind of an, plan of analysis can you put into play to say, okay, we realize that the respondents demographically are represent a distorted picture of the Fitchburg residents. We can normalize that to try and give you an accurate picture of what the average citizen really wants.
Yeah, fortunately, about 1,000 responses ago, quite a bit less than you already have. And we actually poked around that data a little bit earlier today, and we just happened to look at renter versus owner, and the data really was very similar. Scott, I don't know if you remember what some of those numbers were off the top of your head, but like the threshold that was going to be supported was very similar between homeowners and renters, and their numbers between what the actual projects were, like the order of priority, the order that they had them in, was very similar as well. So I guess that's encouraging as well, that how we initially sliced and diced it earlier today, which again, that happened to be homeowners versus renters, but the data was pretty similar actually between the two groups.
All right. Okay, you can move on from wherever we left off before.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Joe, I'm
can I
sorry.
ask one more question?
Yeah, please.
So once the data comes in, will you also be breaking it down by other demographic categories, socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, gender, age?
We can only break it down by what was asked on the survey. And we try to be judicious there in terms of it. So I don't believe race was, I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't think race was on there. Let me check. The more questions we asked, no, it was age, residence, renter, homeowner, the communication question. The more demographic questions that are on there, the less people feel like it's going to be confidential, and then they stop taking the survey. So there will be folks that say, I don't know how many people in my socioeconomic status that are also my race in this age group. People will feel like you're going to figure out who they are, and you can't, because our system prevents you from doing that. But they think someone's going to find out, so they don't take the survey, which really damages your response rates. The other thing that we've been told before is we actually used to have a income question. And when we asked it, it did not produce great results. People would call us and say, because I have less money, are you going to listen to me less often? I don't have as much power in the community. Does that mean you're not going to take it? And people kind of shrugged their hands and said, well, now that they're asking me about income, they're probably only going to listen to people that have more money. And then they stopped taking it. So we don't actually ask income questions that often, because it actually backfired more than it helped. So short answer is no, because we can only disaggregate on what the demographics that were asked for those particular reasons.
Julia?
Yeah, I have a question. So I know that in the code, there was I don't know, like a 12-letter code, I don't remember. We will be able to know from where the responses are coming, from which part of the city, if they are coming from, to have an idea which are the area that people are responding the most. Do you have in that code, do you have something that determine location?
Good question. So that I would actually need to ask the printer. So they have a mailing list, and then we pass them along the codes and say, put these codes and attach these addresses. I don't know if they keep that. I don't know is the honest answer. I could figure it out by asking your printer, but I don't know if they still have that or not.
Because that one will be very important for us to determine from where the responses are coming.
Yeah, Scott, can you jot that down? I don't remember who your printer was off the top of my head, but that would be a question for them. Mia, do you remember?
The printer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was graphic comp.
Oh, graphic comp. Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, along those same lines, there was nothing in the survey that reassured the respondent that there would be nobody looking, that there was no way to tie a particular response to a household. The code is specific to an address, but there was nothing that said, that reassured people that they're not going to use those codes and the addresses to try and figure out who sent the response. And I don't know if that dissuaded anybody from taking the survey or not, but generally speaking, if somebody has an open warrant or whatever, I don't know. There's a variety of reasons that might make people uncomfortable and not take it unless they're given some kind of assurance that it's truly anonymous.
Yeah, the question doesn't come up a whole lot. There's one line, 2 lines, I guess, that says all feedback is kept confidential because all data is returned to community perceptions and independent research firm that the city is hired to assist in the process. Usually that does the trick. We don't get a lot of follow-up questions about that. Usually that suffices, which is why we took the same approach with you here, but that's the words that are in the opening letter.
All right. Move on, I guess.
I think they finished their presentation.
Oh, are you done?
We're all done. That was the end.
Okay. Well, any other questions before we send everyone on their way?
Yeah, I will ask the council to, I don't know if, I will ask the council that the other thing that we need to decide it when we are gonna, if we go to a referendum, which day is gonna be. Is we are gonna go to August or November? I have a lot of concern about the August date, and if we really want to go to August, I would like someone to put in writing what are the pros and cons on going to that date. So this is something that the council will need to decide it, if we are going to August or November.
What are your concerns about August?
It's a low, not too many people go and vote there. It's vacation time. It's primary. People that they go there are, so I don't, I don't think that it's going to be too many people going on August to vote for this, I don't know how the primary traction is going to be to attract people to the polls. So I want to I would like to have some data or something that it tell me why we should go do it in August, in November.
Well, I think the reason that we talked about August before is because we have to have our budget for 2025 done before the election in November. So,
But
Yeah.
other municipalities like Monona and Madison, they're going to November, so they're going to have to put two budget. You know what I mean? So I understand, but if the issue is we don't have the capacity to do two budgets in November, or it's going to be too much work, or it's going to be we really want this referendum to pass. This is the question.
Well, that was the reason we've been talking about August up until this moment. I mean, I think we did briefly discuss that, and then the discussion was that with the election is what, November?
I would like to see bring that and vote and have in writing the decision of the council.
Is the election November 5th?
Yes, it would be November 5th.
So then when do we have to have our budget done?
You would typically vote to approve the budget on November 12th, the first council meeting in November, which means I'm not exactly certain how the process would go, because if we have two budgets going at the same time, how would you propose we do the amendment process, for instance? I suppose if the second budget was created that identified cuts, you would be potentially amending that budget to change cuts, for instance, or reductions in service. So I think, in effect, the entire budget process would be challenging, because we, in effect, would, if we're going to use the same process we would use as a typical operating budget, it would literally be twice the work, and we'd have to have some sort of process in place to track amendments as to which budget they were referring to, and perhaps even debate all amendments as we typically do at the October Committee of the Whole. So folks were prepared to vote on those in the first week of November. So there's certainly a whole host of logistical challenges that could present themselves as it relates to creating two budgets and running two budget processes simultaneously.
What is the drop dead date for us to have a budget approved so that we can get the property tax bills printed?
I think in the past we've done a special meeting if it didn't pass on the first Tuesday.
I just want to know what the date is. What's the absolute last date?
I'd have to check with finance on that to see what that looks like.
Well, let's find that out, because as I'm recalling that it's like the first Friday of December is when the property tax bills start getting printed and mailed out. So theoretically, and I don't know what the logistical process is, do we have to send our data to the county first, and then the county, because we print the county prints them. Okay, so the county's going to print the property tax bills, so we have to get data to them before whatever their deadline is. So that may be the driving factor, because if the county says you have to have everything here by December 1st, that between November 5th and December 1st, that really gives us a very compressed timeline to deal with budget amendments and everything else. Not that we can't do it. I mean, we can be crazy, but I think we will have to have a lot of discussion prior to that about what do we do. I also think there may be an issue, because we're planning on including the police facility operating cost in the budget, and that's going to be about a $500,000 bite.
Yeah, but that one is going to be the 2026 budget, 27 budget.
Well, even so, we were planning on putting something in the 2025 budget for that, because, or we had talked about it anyway, because if we don't have an increased property tax levy, we may not be able to make it fit at all. So if we're going to try to start, my hope, what I've been telling the police department and other people is, my hope is that we will have a police facility approved by the end of the year. But if we do that and we don't have the money for the operating budget, that creates another problem for us as far as letting contracts and everything else. So I don't know.
If I may, one other potential consideration that we would need from a November election date, actually a couple of them, is our contract with Metro. Obviously, one of the considerations that is on the survey is transit, and the council certainly has been interested in potentially using a referendum funding to fund additional or enhanced transit through the city. So we would certainly need to look at what that might look like from a timing perspective if the council would like the service to begin as early as January 1 of 2025. And then, I think the other, at least bit of information that is also out there that could be valuable is that it's appearing likely that the Madison Metropolitan School District is headed to referendum in November as well. And could there be the potential for information, overload, so to speak, for at least our voters who are in both the Madison School District and the city of Verona, or city of Fitchburg, who would then be, needing to inform themselves on two referendum and being potentially voting on two referendum on the same ballot.
Yeah, but in other municipalities have happened in the past. So, I don't think that, I think most of these questions, they have some solution. Is we need to determine if we really want to do something about. That's it.
All right. Okay, any other discussion? Yes, Bill.
I guess I'm curious to know, we must have data on turnout between August and November elections. And are we talking a factor of 50% or a factor of 5,
Well,
we need to look at the data.
that would be difficult to.
Well, Adam might know.
Adam does know, as a matter of fact.
Let me add to that, though, because what we have this year that we haven't had in the August election for a long, long time is a contested assembly primary. And so that's going to that's going to probably increase the voter turnout anyway. Plus, if we put a referendum on, that'll probably increase voter turnout also. But go ahead, Adam.
So as of today at 9:30 a.m., we had 17,234 registered voters. And the question I asked Tracy, what is the voter turnout, last August in 2022 and 2020. So the turnout at the August election in 2020 was 34.5%, and obviously we had a different number of registered voters then. It was less than what we have today. And the turnout in 2022 was 37.4%. So 34% to 37%, so someplace in there. Looking at the November general election in 2020 and 2022 also, in 2020 it was 86%. Obviously, different registered voters, and then also in 2022 it was 79.9%, so about 80%, so between 80 and 86%. So you're talking a difference of 40% roughly of change in turnout.
I can share my screen here in a minute if you'd like to see the actual data in more detail, which could prove to be helpful. Give me 1 second.
Can I ask another question to the group?
Sure, live it up.
Okay, what is for this council and this body to make a decision when we collect, we have the idea how many, the result for the survey, what is the statistical sample that we can feel, comfortable to decide that, yeah, we have the data that we can make a decision? What is that number?
Well, I think they already told us that they have more than what would be a statistical sample.
No, but
they've got 1,500 some plus responses so far.
But that one is representative with the statistical sample or not?
That's what they said. They said this is enough to give them an accurate prediction.
Correct.
Okay. 1,700.
Whatever the number was, yeah. Well, no, they said no. What did you say the number was that you needed to make an accurate prediction?
We look for a response rate of about 15 to 17% on all said and done, but we don't, that's the average, 15 to 17%, but we don't need you to get that amount to have it be predictive. We were looking for about 500 to 600 total respondents, and you're about 3 times past that.
That's not going to give you the information you're looking for, I don't think.
So I'll just put this up. So here's the primary information that Adam went through in August of 2020.
So this was the turnout at 34.5%.
And I think one of the takeaways is the table or the chart at the top as well.
Can you share that with us in an email?
Yeah.
Please? Thank you.
Yeah. I'll just forward you what Tracy had sent me, and it's got a whole bunch of data in it.
It's all on the Dane County Clerk's website.
Yeah, but if I have it in an email, open my email.
Oh, there you go.
And then obviously you can see the turnout for that particular primary. And then transitioning to the general election, November 2020, which coincidentally had a referendum from the Madison Metropolitan School District.
And how much, what is the...
How much was that referendum for?
Yeah, no, how was the yes, what was the percentage? Do you remember or no?
Well, it's right there. It was
I don't see
56
Where?
yes and 1897 no
Where
on the
do
Madison School District referendum.
Where do you see that?
It's
Down there at the bottom.
right here on the screen in the lower right-hand corner.
That referendum passed by probably, it looks like about 80%, with about 80% of the vote.
This right here, where my mouse cursor is. And then you can see the total, the voter turnout down here.
Okay.
And then let me grab a different sheet here for the August primary 2022. For some reason, that one's in an Excel spreadsheet.
Well, that's a spring election.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's August.
Oh, that is August.
I thought it.
We need to get you a better computer that scrolls faster.
Yeah, this one's pretty slow, apparently. So you can then again see the turnout there. This one did not have it broken out on the top like the 2020. Adam, we should talk to Tracy about that. If we can get the same information. Oh, it is. I'm sorry. I started it a little lower on the page. So you can then again see here some other additional information that might be helpful. And then finally, I'll share the 2022 November election. Just right here. Again, largely for the purposes of this. There was, looks like the legalization of marijuana was a referendum question. Oregon schools had a referendum question on there as well, as did Verona. And then you can see the turnout. So we'll send this information to you, Adam. We'll share that information from Tracy. Again, we just got it today.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, discussion, comments? Bill?
Yeah, another question for Rob. So citywide, you said we need 500 or 600 responses in order for you to get a base where you can be pretty confident that your prediction is going to be correct, that a referendum would pass or fail. I think a related question is, for a specific demographic, for instance, renters, how many total respondents would you need in order for us to say, yeah, that's a statistically significant sample size, we can be pretty confident that those views are correct, or, for a specific age demographic?
What proportion of your households are, I guess, I'm not sure what the mailing list was, but I think like of the mailing list, what proportion of that would have been apartments or renters?
Roughly 50%.
So 50%, so that's 7,000. Try to do this off the top of my head. So at 14,000, we needed 993. So you have 7,000 that are renters. So you divide that in half. So you're looking at about 450. If you take the average response rate, that's 17%. So take approximately 15 to 17% of 450.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I follow. Why did you have the four? So if there's 7,000 households and you get...
Yeah, so let me think through my math. So the total denominator was 14,000. That was the number of people that it went to. That's the number of residences within the city of Fitchburg.
Right.
And I just heard you say, I think that 50% of those residences would be rented. So 7,000 residences in Fitchburg would be rented, and 7,000 would be homes.
Correct. So wouldn't we need
Okay.
15% of that 7,000 number?
No, because you don't. That's the benefit of doing a population versus a sample size. So we did a population, we included everybody. So I went almost like worst case scenario and said, if you were to do a sample, which you didn't do, which is the right call. If you were to do a sample, that's a fewer number of people. So I'm trying to give you the absolute max you would need, which is way lower because you didn't do a sample. So I'm thinking 7,000 is roughly the denominator. If we needed 993 people total for 14,000, then I was taking about half of that. So about 450 to 500 people for a population of 7,000. So now I'm looking at 450 or so renters, but obviously not everybody will take the survey. So if you take about 15 to 17%, which is our average response rate of the sample you would need of renters, that's how I got it, 15 to 17% of 450.
Right. So like 70 or 80 total. And so if we had...
yeah, it looks like 67.5 on the lower end and probably about 85 on the upper end. I don't know what the raw number is now. I only had the percentage, and it looks like 15%.
We're above that.
So if we have
a few
1,500, that sounds like 225-ish respondents from renters then.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
All right. Anything else on this issue? All right. Well, seeing a mass silence, thank you for coming and providing an update. And I guess there will be more discussions with you as we move along. Hopefully, we will have some good information on April 24th.
We'll see you in about a month.
All right. So with that, the agenda says we're supposed to have a report from the department, but there is no committee of the whole department. So.
No, that's actually an update from you, Jay.
Well, the update from me is this. This is my last meeting as council president, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to lead the council for the last year. And as we move forward with the election and other changes that are going to happen. I wish all of you good luck, and I will look forward to continuing to serve for at least another year. And with that, we will announce that our next meeting is on April 24th. And with that, we need a motion to adjourn. By anyone.
So moved.
There's a motion.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming.